Party people in the place to be. What's going on? It's me. All right, everybody, get it together. This is not gonna stay up, I don't think. Hold on. Wait a sec. All right, that's better. All right, yeah. So, party people in the place to be. What's going on? It's me. Early morning review, because this is probably the best time to do it. I just thought, I'm like, oh, screw it, just get it done. I went to see Queen of the Ring yesterday, and it was a movie. It was a movie starring Felicity from Arrow, which is the main reason why I wanted to go see it. Jim Cornette was involved in it, and I'm like, Jim Cornette, you know, he's a bit of a historian. He can help this along. He can, you know what I mean? Like he probably wouldn't be involved with something that wouldn't be truer to life, etc. Spoiler alert, this isn't really a spoiler alert, but there were problems. I had issues. I had issues with this movie, and I went in wanting to like it. You have issues with everything. Most things. But I had issues with this one, and I wanted to like it. I really wanted to like it. I didn't even think about it being a biopic, even though it is a biopic. I have a problem with biopics and have ever since Get On Up. Get On Up was a terrible biopic. Bohemian Rhapsody was a fucking atrocious biopic. I've had problems. Brian Banks' story was not a good biopic. I've had problems with biopics, and I feel like no one knows how to do them right anymore. Like, I feel like Ray and Walk the Line were the last two good biopics. The 42 wasn't a good movie. And people don't know how to do biopics anymore. And it used to be the easiest thing to do. It used to be one of the easiest movies to do. People don't know how to do them anymore. And that carries over here. I think the overall issue with the movie is that it didn't feel like they didn't care about Mildred Burke. It's the story of Mildred Burke, the pioneer in women's professional wrestling. It didn't feel like they didn't care about the story of Mildred Burke. It felt like they did care. It felt like in some places they may have cared a little too much in regards to her and Billy Wolf and Mae Young. But it also felt like whoever made the movie, not necessarily the writer, maybe the writer, I don't know how much of the script made it to the screen, but whoever directed the movie, the cinematographer, the editor, and the music department didn't have the skills to pull off whatever anybody thought of. There was a lack of skill and maybe a lack of budget. I saw another review last night that said budget, and yeah, that may also make sense. It seemed like there was a lack of skill and or budget and or time in making the movie and in telling the story. Apparently the movie is 2 hours 15 minutes long. It didn't necessarily feel like that to me, but it was 2 hours 15 minutes long, which is too long for a movie like this. And at the same time, it felt rushed. Everything felt rushed. It had the problem of trying to cover too much in too much of a span of time in too little amount of time for the movie. It tried to cover too many years in 2 hours, and even with the overrun, as Jim Cornette likes to talk about with AEW, it still was rushing. It almost felt like an AEW production. It was overtime, seemingly cheap, and still didn't do a lot of details well. Didn't you go to AEW Revolution? I did, because the seats were inexpensive, because Kyle asked me to go, and I had a good time. There were some good matches, but there were and WWE does the same thing too. There's a lot of details that don't cost any money, that don't cost any time, that can make a product better. And for some reason, AEW loves to throw all that away. And for some reason, WWE loves to throw all that away. And for some reason, this movie threw a lot of that away. This movie threw a lot of that away. Felicity was good in the movie. The problem with Felicity, and I'm calling her Felicity, Emily Bett Rickards, I think is her name. Not Rickards. If it were Ricker, oh, I wish it were Ricker, because then I might have seen her at a party. Anyway, flash moment there. We'll call her Felicity for now. Felicity, this script didn't do her the favors it should have. She got her body in shape. She looked amazing. And she already had, I think, I seem to vaguely remember she had a bit of some guns in Arrow, particularly the last seasons, I think. Like, she was in shape during Arrow. Like, you can't be around that and not be. She wasn't in Diggle shape, but she was definitely in shape. And she definitely super gunned up for this one. Super in shape for this one. And the problem with her in this movie is the same problem Aldous Hodge had in the Brian Banks story. This should have been a movie on paper, and in decades past, this would have been a movie to put her on the map, to put Aldous on the map, to make them immediately jump out and be taken seriously, and oh my gosh, who is this person? And the problem is what she had to work with. All those things I talked about, the pacing, the editing, the music, the tone, all those, the cinematography, the effect, all those things that I talked about worked against her. So there were definitely times and points in this movie that takes place in almost a century ago, takes place in the 1930s, 1940s, into the 50s, I think. It's hard to get a time stamp too, because another issue is they don't age people properly. They don't age. The only person that ages in this movie is Mildred Burke's son, and they have him age so rapidly, far more than TV child aging syndrome, you know, where one season you got a baby on the show and the next season she's 5 years old. No, more than that. Like, he ages all the way up into seemingly his 20s from a baby very fast. And no one else ages. They don't put a wrinkle on Emily Bett. They don't put a wrinkle on Billy Wolf. They don't put a wrinkle on anybody else in this movie. They don't age. Nope. They don't change no hairstyles. They barely change clothes. They do not. So it's hard to get a gauge of how much time has passed. Again, I go back to Ray, which seems to be the template for. Well, I don't know what 2000 did. All of Hollywood decide we don't have to do another good biopic ever again after Ray or I think Walk the Line was the next year. And Walk the Line was pretty good. I still think Ray was better, but Walk the Line was up there. It was in that range. It was right there. But did they not think they ever had to do another good biopic ever again after that? After those two? I mean, the details on this it was just atrocious. From the start, and as a wrestling fan, and as a former wrestler, there's a lot of elements that I didn't like in it that I'm sure Jim Cornette didn't see the script beforehand, and I haven't heard him shilling for it. I kind of didn't want to. Until I saw the movie, and now that I've seen it, I kind of don't want to see him shilling for it, because I'm like, Jim. Because I'm sure he's going to shill for it. I'm sure he's been shilling for it and calling it the greatest thing to happen to cinema since the edited film reel. But there are some elements here. There is some stuff here that they did not get right. And and here's the thing. Unlike big studios, unlike a lot of movies that we get now, a lot of remakes, a lot of sequels, a lot of hack adaptations, the feeling you get is not that they got it wrong on purpose, or they got it wrong because studio interference, or they got it wrong any of the other. It's not incompetent. Well, it's not malicious incompetence, and some studio bean counter saying, wouldn't it be nice if we threw in a love interest for this monk? No, it's not. It's not something stupid like that, and it's not. Nobody's throwing in a Poochie character, and it's not. Malicious hatred for the property like Paul Feig had for Ghostbusters, or like Elizabeth Banks had for Charlie's Angels. Like, it's not malicious hatred for the property. It was a skill issue, dog. It was a skill issue. They didn't have the skills to really do subject justice, and the subject should be done justice. Women's wrestling, I was talking to my friend that I went to the movie with, women's wrestling now, who's not a wrestling fan, doesn't know anything about wrestling, and he had a lot of the same thoughts I did about the movie, just as a movie. The story of Mildred Burke, a pioneer for women's wrestling, probably should be told. You hear about Mildred Burke from old historians and people who talk about women's wrestling all the time, right? Foundation bearer, great. You want to see those stories. That's a good story to tell, especially with how big women's wrestling is now, and especially with WWE trying for some reason to get Michelle McCool and Nikki Bella over as pioneers of women's wrestling. What the fuck, when they were the reason why women's wrestling sucked as bad as it did, part of the reason why women's wrestling sucked as bad as, Michelle McCool's going into the Hall of Fame. Fuck does that mean? The fuck does that mean? The WWE Hall of Fame is fucking Paul Orndorff left his ring in the hotel room. Fucking meaningless. But, okay, fine. It's best to, what's going on, Anika? I hope you're feeling better. I hope you're feeling better, by the way. Shout out to Fanika. Hope you're feeling better. See, you should come back to Long Beach, is what I'm saying. But it's a story that needs to be told. It's a story that should be told. It's a good story, right? But it's a lack of skill. It's a lack of skill, and it doesn't do Emily any favors. It's not a star-bearing performance for her, unfortunately. I doubt that she will get any kind of nominations for anything from it, any real kind of recognition from it. She might get more parts in like superhero stuff, but she already had superhero pedigree. She was in Arrow, so it doesn't do her any favors. There's some tonal shifts and whiplash in some of the scenes that I don't think it's her fault. I think it's probably the fault of editing. They probably did some shots that put in some different shots that probably some different takes that probably weren't the best. The director may not have exactly known how to direct her well, or her and Billy Wolf. Billy Wolf's character is all over the place. It felt like they were trying to make him a complicated guy, other than a cartoon villain, but they didn't do that well either. There was no skill in doing that. There was no mastery in doing that. There's a lot of stuff in here that felt like a first draft. There's a lot of montages that felt like first drafts. Some of the props looked terrible, including the championship belt. It looked like a modern day weight belt that they cut the middle off of and put a piece of tin in. It didn't look like an old school belt. Some of the hair choices, Mildred's son's hair looks like any broccoli-headed punk you'd see at fucking 24-hour fitness at 3 p.m. He doesn't look like he's in the 50s or the 40s or whenever. He looks like he's from 2025, and he looks like he's from 2025, and he's outside with your daughter, with your high school daughter. He looks like he's right now some 18-year-old that's about to go to school right now as I'm recording this, and about to go to what's in season right now. What is it? March? What's in season? Baseball? About to go to baseball practice right now. Like this, not good. There's definitely some elements that weren't good. There's some elements that were good. You got to see some real life wrestlers in there, including Toni Storm, who I definitely saw not being the character. I guess her character's name is Clarifornia, and she's playing Clarifornia. Tell you what, there were definitely shots where she was being timeless Toni Storm. there was some timeless Toni Storm mugging going on in some of these in a few of her scenes. The model from AEW who got interviewed and said, "You all know wrestling. You all know you're gonna win beforehand, and that's why blah 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 blah. I'm a stupid model. I don't know how to actually talk." Well, her character was also was not useless. She played a black female pioneer wrestler, but you could have got somebody else for that role. She is another one who looks like she belongs now. She does not look like she belongs in the 30s or 40s. She looks like she belongs in the 2025s. She looks like now. She looks like a model for now. She doesn't look like a wrestler either. She looks like a model. She doesn't look like the wrestler she was supposed to be portraying. I don't know why you cast her. I don't know why you cast her. There's no reason to cast her. I don't know why you did it. I don't know why you did it. There are other black female wrestlers you could have cast. You could have cast. If you think Jackie Moore is too old, maybe. Fine. Although, really, they didn't age anybody else up, so why the fuck not get Jackie Moore? Okay, fine. How about Athena? How about, anybody else? Not good. Not great. Or, a real actress. Because she's not a particularly good actress. She's not a particularly good actress, and she seems like she fits in today. And that's another problem I have with period movies, with these biopics and stuff. And for me, that started with American Hustle. Remember American Hustle? All Hollywood loved American Hustle. Nominated for all these Oscars. Blah, blah, blah. Jennifer Lawrence's starring performance. Blah, blah, blah. It felt like children dressed up like their parents. It didn't feel like people in and of that time period. You know what I mean? Boogie Nights felt like people in and of that time period because it had more people that were more connected to that time period in it. And the people in charge knew how to capture that. American Hustle didn't know how to capture that. And since American Hustle, seemingly no period piece knows how to do that. The New Wonder Years was atrocious at that. I couldn't get past one episode because I'm like, this feels like, and I love Dule Hill, but this feels like kids playing in their parents' clothes who don't know anything about the time period. Nothing. Like, even that 70s show felt of the time, and the kids in that show didn't really know about it, but this in a lot of ways felt like there were a lot of actors who didn't feel like they were of the time. Ironically enough, one of the actors who did feel like they were of the time is Naomi. Naomi's in it, and she looked like she was of the time. She kind of felt like she was of the time, but she's still, the two lines that she had was still god-awful. She is terrible. Never stick them. The only halfway decent time Naomi has ever sounded on a microphone was when she and Bianca were crying at each other in the middle of the ring as she turned. That's the only time it felt semi-natural and not like a line reading. Even here, the two lines that she had, God, she is off. She's good in the ring. She is terrible on a microphone. Bloody hell. She is awful. She sounds so stilted. She seemingly has no personality. She is bad. She only had two lines. She was terrible. They were playing around. I'll give you, I guess now we can get into actual spoilers. Those weren't really spoilers. Those are more reviews of this stuff. We can get into actual spoilers now, as I'm getting closer to the job, and this is about to end. It goes over Mildred Burke's life. She's a single mother in a cafe and meets with Billy Wolf. I didn't like, from the very start, she goes to a wrestling event with her mom, who, again, they also didn't age up and didn't seem like she was much older than, if older at all than her, and I guess maybe that was trying to prove a point that she had her young or whatever, but you can still do that and make it look like there's at least a 10-year age gap between the actors. So she goes to the wrestling matches where Billy Wolf is wrestling and sits behind Billy Wolf's son, and Billy Wolf's son just out of nowhere starts spilling all the secrets of what professional wrestling is to this wide-eyed Mildred Burke who's in love with pro wrestling. What? In the 30s or 40s? What? A child? You're what? The son of a wrestler who's in the ring right now in the 1930s or 40s is just for a pretty girl gonna say, oh yeah, we call them heels and baby faces, and use the word script? Use the word script? They There are parts of the country where you still get backhanded today. If a wrestler hears you use the word script. And he's just, what the, no. Whoever gave the writer those notes, bad note giver. And that's start of everything going super fucking fast. She hooks up with, eventually Billy Wolf allows her to train with him, even though he says she's a skinny little whatever, and miraculously she gets muscles somehow. We don't see how. We just see one day she's posing in the mirror with muscles with her kid and talking about this life she's gonna have. Billy Wolf takes her Carney on the road. They meet Mae Young. They meet other people. Billy Wolf builds a wrestling empire with girls, even though women's wrestling is outlawed in a lot of different places. Mildred Burke doesn't get to wrestle in Madison Square Garden, unfortunately, but her and Billy Wolf have a relationship. Billy Wolf abuses her. Billy Wolf cheats on her, but then they play Billy Wolf like sympathetic, like he hits her, and then he's like, oh, I didn't know. Oh, I didn't take, what? Like you didn't, you can do complicated, but they had him go from methodically beating her, like methodically punching her and making sure that, you know, like beating her up, to immediately being a sniveling little pathetic, like what? Like, if you're gonna, you can do complicated. There have been complicated, complex abusers in media, abusers of all kind in media. You can do it. It's been done. There are templates all over the place. Find the templates. You can do that. They didn't do that here. They just, they had the nugget of the idea to make him complex, but again, skill issue. They didn't have the skill to pull it off well enough to make those transitions well. And speaking of transitions, the scene transitions were awful and a lot of times abrupt. It felt very much like an old school TV made for TV movie, an old school TV biopic, but not a good one. Not The Temptations, not a good one. A cheap one. Yada yada yada. They get married on paper only so she can get a piece of the business, eventually get divorced. They split up the proceeds, and Mildred's company becomes bigger than Billy Wolf, so Billy Wolf has to come crawling back to her, and his champion versus her for the championship. And they brought back the girl who beat her up in the county fair for real, who took out her knee and put her out of action for too long because she didn't want to go along with the gimmick, and it turns into a shoot fight in the ring, and she stands tall and has a Rocky moment, which they already played at the beginning of the movie, but they go through the entire 5 minutes that they just showed at the beginning of the movie at the end of the movie again, just to pad it out one more time. And at the end, she celebrates in the ring in the arms of her son, who looks like her lover at the end, the way he's holding her up. Like, yeah, that was an odd little moment. And in the middle, there's a convoluted love triangle with Billy Wolf's son that seemingly comes out of relatively nowhere. A lot of stuff kind of comes out of nowhere in this movie. It's not great. It's not well done. The story should be told, but it should be told with somebody with more skill, with maybe or money and or time, because the editing choices were awful. Way too many flashes and way too many almost unfinished scenes sliced together. It could have been better than it ended up being, and there's definite promise here, but it's very much, this movie feels very much like AEW, in that there's stuff that they can do to make it unquestionably good, and they didn't do it for whatever reasons. Money, time, lack of skill, whatever. There are things that could have been done that weren't done, that probably should have been done, and seemingly, like, there were a couple of montages that seemed like they were more of the time and actually used real life footage, which when it happened, I'm like, well, why haven't you done this whole movie? Why haven't you used this whole time? And they never go back to use it again. So again, there's nuggets of ideas that they have that they may use once, but don't use again. The music. Oh, the music is awful. Like, they have 1970s, 1980s, 1990s music in here. They don't, music of the time. They didn't license music of the time for this movie. And it's like, you can, because a lot of music in the 30s and 40s wasn't licensed. It's public domain. Especially now. What's public domain for music? I think a lot of stuff, because I think the Mickey Mouse, Tugboat Willie came up after Disney even extended it. So I think it's like 85 years. A lot of that stuff is public domain now. You know what I mean? Like, that's why if you go to what used to be the 99-cent store, when they used to have DVDs, you can find, they had Three Stooges DVDs all over the place. They had the Lucy Show DVDs all over the place. They had Buster Keaton all over the place. You can find Billie Holiday music all over the place, because it was public domain, because nobody had the rights, or the rights that they did have or sign over then were bullshit anyway. So, you know what I mean? Like, you can get stuff from then. You can get a band who knows how to do that kind of sound from back then. There are a lot of niche hipster bands that can do that for you, that can give you that sound. There's a lot. Start with the Dust Bowl Revival and go from there, but they didn't do that. And there's elements of this movie that didn't work. It should have been better. It was not better. I'm very disappointed. I'm disappointed for Emily Bett. I want it better for her. I'm disappointed for. And had Walter Goggins in it, and he's, of course, and as soon as he comes up as a promoter, I'm like, of course you're a wrestling promoter. Yeah, you are. But he was good. He was good in it. They could have done better by this movie, and whatever elements didn't allow them to do better by this movie. Maybe it was funding, maybe it was time, maybe it was skill, or some combination of all the above. But this is a miss, unfortunately. Queen of the Ring is a miss. Out of $15, Queen of the Ring deserves. I'm gonna give it 4 out of $15. It's not good. It's not. It could be. There's so much. I wanted to be nice and give it 5. I couldn't even muster up a 5 out of 15. 4 out of $15. There's elements of it that suck. There's elements of it that are good. There are parts in it that Emily Bett is right on the money. There's parts of it that Billy Wolf is very good. And then there's parts of it that aren't. And then there's parts of it that sell out wrestling too much. And then there's parts of it that try to mix kayfabe and shoot too much. And I guess maybe that's the magic of professional wrestling. But again, like a lot of other elements in the movie, it doesn't do it consistently enough to make it good. It doesn't do it consistently, and it doesn't do it good enough with the times that it does do it, that it means anything. There's a lot of stuff in this that doesn't mean anything. This movie wasn't as good as it should. And the wrestling. Oh, how was the wrestling? There's some stuff that looked halfway decent. And there's some stuff that there were some cutaways and awkward shots and stuff. They did do better with the talking in the ring though than Glow does. You know, people having full-on conversations. They did talk in the ring, but it wasn't soliloquies like that in between moves. But they did good enough on a lot of stuff. And you could tell Emily Bett definitely learned some wrestling. She definitely learned how to do a little bit of work, which I'm surprised she didn't show up at AEW. I'm surprised she didn't go there and take a bump or whatever. Like, they couldn't wrangle her to come and do it. Whether they spent all their money on fucking Leslie fuck you Jones and fucking Chang from Community. Ugh. Hack out the money for Emily Bett, you morons. Have her do a run in the Timeless Tony match or something. Jeez. But the 4 out of $15, not that great. Tell me what you thought of Queen of the Ring down there in the comment section. Like, share, subscribe. This will go up on the channel, on the YouTube channel, whenever it does. I'm here at work now, so I gotta go. Tell me what you think down there, and peace the fuck out, motherfucker.